Okay, so here it is. This guy, this pagan priest, wrote these things down. There's like numbers and little symbols and all these. He wrote this stuff through God's Spirit over his hands. And then he could actually retell the story. He was writing supernaturally the story of God becoming a human being and walking amongst us, and then of course being hated, because deep down inside, in some place in us, we just hate God because we don't want to do what we're supposed to do, because evil has been blended with good. So this guy in the 70s, okay, around this whole region, this wild stuff happened. This guy in the 70s, this pagan priest, writes down these hieroglyphics because of this Jesus visitation. He tells all the people that he's given talismans and all these other things to. Yeshua visits him in the midst of his sacrifice. He is sacrificing to a blood god. He's making some kind of blood sacrifice. Yeshua visits him, but won't tell him who he is. And he says, stop. This is not the way to worship me. And, Yahweh looks on the heart. The scriptures say, man looks on the outward appearance, but Yahweh looks on the heart. So Yahweh must have heard the guy's heart really, really calling out. The guy's got leprosy. He's got humility somehow. And at that moment, Yeshua, who's aware of everybody's heart at the same time, goes and visits him, freaks him out. He says, hey, that's not the way to try and communicate with me. And he says, who are you? And Yeshua says, I'm not going to tell you until after you burn all your talismans and fetishes and all the witchcraft materials that you've basically made your living on, and tell all your people to burn all their stuff. Then I'll tell you who I am. And he says, I am Yeshua, I am Jesus. And it freaks the guy out. And then Yeshua gives him like this understanding of the fact that he is the blood sacrifice for everybody, and you just need to use his name and the vocal reminder of the blood sacrifice of Yeshua. And his hand, this pagan priest's hand, is guided to all of these hieroglyphics. Come on. I mean, this is wacky, man. This is like better than flipping ghost stories. This is God loving human beings directly, because all of a sudden they were calling out right. So the priest could not read or write. The Lord told him to go to Soe, which is a town. When you get there, buy a pencil and a pad of paper. Yeshua told him. He obeyed the Lord. When he returned to the village, God took his hand and wrote Bible verses in his book. He did not use normal Timor writing, but a type of hieroglyphics. The Lord gave him many stories found throughout the whole Bible, directly. No Western interpreter involved. A photo of this exact writing appears on page 140 of Like a Mighty Wind, which is this book, Like the Mighty Wind, Like the Mighty Wind by Meltari. He could also read these hieroglyphics very clearly. So the guy can read the stuff that he wrote, right? He at once shared what God had told him with his people, because he was the priest and they trusted him, and I'm sure he had moved spirit realm powers, so they had faith in him and his ability to interact with the spirit realm. But he had gotten the greater interaction through Yeshua, right? Woo! The people believed what the guy was saying when he told them to believe in Yeshua, in Jesus. Some of the tribes said, this is just like being a Christian. We're not Christians, the priest said. We just believe in Jesus and do what God tells us. The Lord continued to teach them. when this is Mel Tari, this is Mel Tari talking, that's Mel and his wife in 1972, when I was a teenager, or I don't know, how old was I, 14, maybe 15? Anyhow, so Mel is saying, when we went to this town where this shaman priest, pagan priest guy was, when we went to tell the good news to them, that God has befriended the whole world and can deliver us from all of our evils, we found this wonderful fellowship of believers, Christians, walking a holy life with the anointed one, with the empowered one, Mashiach, Christ. So these happy Christian, anointed in the Holy Spirit, being guided by God people head toward this place in the middle of nowhere or wherever it is, and they bump into a bunch of people that have just gotten the whole visitation direct, without any other teachers, direct from the Master, direct from Yahoshua, just like in the book of Acts. Remember, in the book of Acts, 3 times, Rav Shaul, the super rabbi, 3 times he tells his weird story of being interrupted in the midst of his spiritual practice, which is locking the Jesus disciples up and hoping that they die. Now, this is a perfect beginning for you dealing with these writings. The Bible is 3 parts: predictions and preparations about a supernatural visitor. That's the Hebrew book. There are justifications for killing because they're preserving a lineage to bring forth one person. Okay, part number 2 is the life and teachings of the supernatural visitor, that person. And he says, now love, bless, and be kind to your enemies, and you are really with God when they persecute you, hate you, and kill you. So there's no longer killing of human beings. There was allowed to be killing of human beings in this season. Then Yeshua says, guess what? My true believers are not going to worship in any specific location. They're going to worship in spirit and in truth. And then, so predictions and preparations for the supernatural visitor, life and teachings of the supernatural visitor, and then the first peoples who receive the supernatural powers of the supernatural visitor. Remember, the Jesus character was predicted in hundreds of predictions. He was seen by hundreds of people across 40 days, alive after a gory public execution. And he is known for hundreds of thousands of displays of supernatural powers, not just healing. Power over elements of the earth, over water, over food, over space, location, time, etc., etc. He came to them walking on the waves. Okay, if that's a myth, who cares? If that's really real, try and talk to the guy. Because the story is, he went up through the clouds while a bunch of people were watching, and he said, I'm going to come back. And then these spirit beings showed up and said, why are you people standing and staring into the sky? Just do those things that he told you to do. And the angels, the spirits, can see both the spirit realm and this realm. So, But then the other thing is, the word Christian. The word Christian appears 3 times in the New Testament. And the word disciple appears 270 times. The word Christian is actually a slanderous term made up by those in Antioch. That's Acts chapter 11, I think, verse 16. C, something like that. Where the Christians were first, the disciples were first called Christians in Antioch. This is after Jesus has gone away. These are people who know how to creatively slander. And the word Christian appears 3 times. The word disciple appears 270 times. So are you a disciple, a true follower of Yahoshua of Nazareth? And are you displaying the powers that he gives to ordinary human beings because his spirit is in you and they flow out from time to time, sometimes a little bit unexpectedly? So anyhow, that's Like a Mighty Wind. Get a copy of it. Read it. Have it in your library. If they were going to burn all my books, this is one of the books that I would keep right next to the scriptures. The Billy Graham Evangelistical Association at one point a long time said that this book is nothing but an extension of the book of Acts. And as a matter of fact, since it's modern day stuff, since it's stuff that has happened recently, you know what? It's almost more important. Because there's tons of the book of Acts all around, but when you can read people's real, actual day-to-day responses to all this wild kind of stuff, woo, that's pretty good. Then as you read the book of Acts, you remember, hey, they're commercial fishermen. They're like tax collectors, who are like drug dealers. These are tough, ordinary characters that Jesus picked to be his holy apostles. And you is one of them too. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.